What's going on, fellow A-plussers? It's your boy Adam Perez. We're back once again with a brand new episode review as we're set to go ahead and dive into episode number 8 of X-Men 97. And I thought Indy was going to be the one to go ahead and finish off this season for you guys, but I will be taking the baton and finishing off the last 3 episodes of this season. Some things have unfortunately come up for Indy. He definitely will be back to the channel here within a couple of weeks. But in the meantime, we're definitely going to be finishing off this series, which I'm eager to talk to you guys about it. I really love this series so far. I'm sure Indy would certainly appreciate being here and talking about episode 8 for you guys. But I'm just as excited to go ahead and wrap up this particular series with you all. So expect me the next 2 episodes after this. I know this episode dropped a little bit late. I think we're like literally right around the corner from a brand new episode dropping this week. So I will definitely try and get episode number 9 to you guys out relatively quickly this week, just to make sure that we're all caught up before we get into the finale. But let's talk about this episode, man. First and foremost, I gotta say, Magneto was right. I love the idea of him just being done with it at the end of this episode. Like, you know what? I'm just about to shut this whole party down, man. Like, letting off this disrupting a huge magnetic field with his abilities. I mean, I think he's an Omega level mutant, if I'm not mistaken. Shutting everything down in the world. Blackouts everywhere, taking out power sources for these Sentinels, if you will, these hybrids, if you will. Really kind of putting things to a stop here. How Bastion and Mr. Sinister are going to go ahead and activate some of their sleeper cells, if you will, going forward, that I have no idea. But Magneto ain't playing around no more, man. Magneto ain't playing around, showcasing his ability. And so he about to tear that ass up for sure. But we do have a returning Charles Xavier at the very end saying, I hope I'm not too late. Well, you made it to the party just in time, Charles, okay? Because ish has hit the fan, man. And I love that he hits us with the "to me, my X-Men." That's definitely like the theme of this season for sure. As they're eventually going to be getting the band back together. So I am kind of curious to see where this puts Magneto in the line of fire. Is Professor X going to push back against the actions that Magneto is now probably going to take? Because this feels like, as Wolverine said it, like this feels very much like war. Like he's going after the humans, or at least after Bastion. And anybody associated with that dude, and putting him on that cross, if you will, that X. So Magneto's definitely not going to be listening to some let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya, as Professor X is probably going to try and preach to him. So I will be interested to see where Magneto falls in regards to, is he now in an alliance still with the X-Men? Is he doing his own thing? That should be pretty fun to kind of explore and get into in the next couple of episodes. Right off the bat, I think for me, one of the standout things in here was the action. You know, the action always wins me over in X-Men 97, but we had a really lengthy couple of battle sequences in here, whether that have been the Summers family facing off against some of these sleeper cell hybrid sentinels, or seeing Nightcrawler and Wolverine tag team to go ahead and face off against some of them as well inside of the mansion. Just some incredible moments. I think out of the fight sequence that we got, seeing Wolverine go berserker rage on these guys and working sort of back to back with Nightcrawler, who's got like 3 swords going in here, was pretty epic. I've never seen an animated shot quite like seeing Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and one of the Sentinel hybrids being teleported. Like, it was such a really cool point of view and perspective to kind of see what transpires or goes on in the BAMF whenever, you know, Nightcrawler disappears and, you know, pops up in another location and teleporting like that. So it was just a really cool perspective to kind of see like what that ride would be like, what it looks like visually for that brief second, and even seeing Wolverine's expression during all of it. I don't think he was certainly expecting to be teleported out of there, but I thought visually it was a really cool shot that they wind up giving us in there. But great stuff, man, when it comes to the action. I mean, even seeing Jean Grey, Scott, and Cable working together sort of as a family a little bit, like Jean kind of accepting the concept of family. And we'll talk about that here in just a little bit, but like her getting on Cable's ass about not wearing a seatbelt, I think even Cable comments on the idea of like how she's speaking to him and stuff like, all right, come on, let's get in the back of the plane, sort of thing, like just being really bossy like a mom usually is. It was just really cool to kind of see them working together as a team. Scott really embracing the idea of him and his son having some father-son time in the sense of really kicking some hybrid sentinels ass in here. And so I thought it was just really cool to see Scott sort of, hit a smile for us, a nice little smirk in there as he got some great tag team working, and really cool shot of first off the fact that they have a Porsche in the back of the jet really made me laugh. But the fact that they come out of it and they hit the ground running sort of thing was great. Seeing Gene navigate the car while the boys are just demolishing things in front of them and behind them, and then the cool explosion of Gene catching everybody in her psychic bubble with the really cool landing and explosion behind him. I mean, wow, magnifique in regards to just the cartoon animation, the special effects in here. I mean, they really outdo themselves when it comes to the action sequences. Like I've always already been impressed with the animation style, but I tell you, when they really get into the action, you can just feel a lot of the anime inspirations that they've pulled from other series that they watch to make for some great action sequences. Man, they truly blow me away, and I'm always entrenched whenever we get a great action sequence. But I think for me, one of the great storylines in this week's episode for me really had to deal with the family dynamic between Scott, Cable, and especially Jean in here. It's pretty cool. I enjoyed seeing Scott struggle with the idea of like not having that close connection to his son. Even when this episode begins, she says, "Have you spoken to him yet?" And he's like, I think his superpower is avoiding me, or my superpower is, having him leave the room when I enter one, or something like that. So you clearly get to see like how Cable looks at his father. Clearly there's some resentment in there, talking about the idea of like, oh, now you want to save the world, you're like decades too late sort of mentality of, the son kind of clearly giving some pushback. So, there is a level of heartbreak and blame that I think Scott puts on himself, especially when he realizes like, I sent him out to save his life and give him a better future, only to come and find out that the future that he went to was just worse. And I'm sure as a dad that's got to be hard to imagine. And I think for me, because I'm a father now, I got a 2.5-year old, his storyline really hits for me. We just really want the best for our children, and to come to find out that your actions, as hard as it was to sacrifice that for yourself, and come to find out that your son has been living this type of life, that definitely has got to be pretty brutal to have firsthand knowledge of, and feel like you certainly weren't there or a part of his life. So I am going to be interested to see how they navigate this father-son relationship. But I think Jean adds an even more interesting wrinkle and dynamic, and I love how she explains the fact that she really has the feelings and the memories of that of Madeline Pryor. It makes her and Scott's situation super awkward at times, because, she probably feels like she didn't miss a beat with Scott, that she shared a lot of those memories, but at the same time feels isolated and lost in a sense of like, I that really wasn't me. And so the idea of them trying to find that balance of Scott knowing it was Madeline that he shared those moments with, now Jean is back and he clearly loves and feels some type of way about Jean, but it's kind of not the same because he had a child with somebody else, right? Like that whole family dynamic has got to sort of be rebuilt. And there is something really fascinating. I'm glad that like of all the people that Jean got to speak with in this episode, that it was Nightcrawler, because he does have a very interesting family lineage with Mystique and Rogue, and the idea of like, you know, uh, being blood is one thing, being family is something else, right? It's truly sort of a mindset. And, for Jean, it feels like that's a mindset that she embraced towards the end of this episode. Like, yeah, while I may not necessarily be the mother of Abel, and may not have been the one to carry the child for Scott, clearly she has those feelings, clearly she feels like there's a connection there. And it really depends on how she makes the most of it. And I think if she can utilize those memories to help create those feelings and, just be that bond that kind of keeps Scott and Nathan together and be that, I don't want to say that third wheel, but be that mother figure that Cable certainly needs, even if it's not his mom. It's one of those things where I can easily see Scott coming around. I can easily see Cable maybe coming around at some point in time. So I appreciate the effort that Gene is certainly putting forth in this episode, honestly. But I really love the complex emotions and the complex situations that these characters find them in. I mean, you can really tell that the writing is just really top tier and exploring these characters in ways that we really hadn't seen before. And for that, it's super fascinating. If anything, I just want to give a quick honorable mention to Roberto Costa's mom, Sunspot's mom, for being the biggest B ever. For literally willingly giving her son over to these Sentinel hybrids. Clearly seeing that they were like pacing them down, fists even powered up to take them down, and they're like, "Oh, we're not trying to harm them. We just want to help them." Like, really? Like, you gonna believe these zombie ass looking Sentinel people over your own child? It's just sad, man. It's just it's truly sad. Outside of that, I really enjoyed the theme of this week's episode was certainly family, and understanding sort of the past of your family. And when we get the opportunity to see a little bit more about Bastion in here, I found it pretty fascinating that his father was infiltrated by a futuristic virus or some sort of enemy, that being that of Nimrod infiltrating his body, going on to meet a woman, have a child, and then thus creating Bastion himself. And this goes to play in the bigger role of things that Cable kind of mentioned along with Beast, in the sense of now you've got this sort of entity that can reproduce and wind up creating other hybrid humans that as they continue to reproduce, it's almost like you're making versions 2.0, versions 3.0, right? They just continue to upgrade until they're just like almost the ultimate weapon. And Bastion is probably like what, like version 2.0 at this point, and you see how incredibly powerful that dude is. I mean, just imagine if Bastion then had a kid with somebody else, how powerful that child would eventually be. But I really enjoyed learning a little bit about his past here, and really his ultimate goal in the sense of having humans. And then also, and again, this is like the social commentary aspect um about X-Men that I love, because they already have like this conspiracy theory out there, or this idea of like being like this replacement theory, you know what I mean? Where people are worried about other minorities or other people of diverse cultures and society sort of taking over and becoming the majority, of this particular country, right? And there are a lot of people that are certainly desperate to do certain things to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so when you have somebody like Bastion that really kind of feeds into those fears of those people, when they look around and they start seeing, mutant kind, becoming more and more accepted, and the idea of like mutants taking over their jobs, and pushing people to the side, he's building into their fear and having humans literally volunteer themselves to try and become better, right? To try and become on par with these mutants, not really fully understanding what's going to happen to them. And the fact that in this episode, we see so many of them sort of activated, and even Beast is surprised by it. It's just really overwhelming. Not shocking. It shouldn't be shocking to know that there are a group of people willing out there to take those necessary risks in order to, quote unquote, not be replaced, if you will, and somebody like Bastion to go ahead and kind of feed into that anger and fear. It's pretty eye-opening stuff, man. And so I really enjoy how X-Men 97 really dives into that from a sort of a mutant perspective, but it's so easily relatable in our society that it's pretty crazy more than anything. But excellent episode this week, man. I had a great time with this episode. I truly did. And I cannot wait till episode number 9. Now, look, guys, at the end of the day, these are just simply my A plus opinions. I always want to know yours. If there's aspects about this week's episode that we didn't touch upon, or that you feel we can explore even further, things you disagree with, things that you like what I certainly pointed out, I definitely want to know your guys' thoughts. Let your thoughts be known in the comment section box below. That really helps the algorithm and allows us to continue to talk about this particular week's episode all the way until next time. But until then, guys, that's going to do it for me here, but I'll certainly see you guys later on this week. Until then, do me a big favor, as always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.